Welcome to the Sheets on Top podcast. This is a place where we talk to inspiring women and share their stories. Hi, I'm Jessica.
And I'm Tracy, and we are your hosts. What does it mean to be a woman in today's world? What does success look like? What does it feel like? Is there one definition?
We talk to women entrepreneurs and change makers about their ups and downs, their triumphs and failures, and how they define success.
We believe that every woman has a unique value and a story worth telling, and it's our great joy to share these stories with you. We are so excited to bring you our conversation with Raia Coach Carey.
Raia is a certified life coach and a motivational speaker who's having an incredible impact. And what she gets you to do is tap into that self-confidence that you didn't know you had.
Yeah, that's right. She equips you with tangible tools. She actually calls it your toolbox. And you can use these tools in your life to steer you towards things like self-awareness and resilience. And what I love is she steers you towards sustainable success, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, and she's definitely had her own obstacles to overcome, just like all of us. But what I found kind of unique and amazing about her, it's like she's always had this self-love. She's always been able to tap into it. And now she's teaching us how to do it.
Yeah, this conversation for me was definitely life-changing. And I would say, changed me for the better.
We are thrilled to introduce you to Coach Carey.
Hi, Carey.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey.
We're so excited to talk with you today. And, we were going over our initial conversation, and we wanted to talk a little bit about, we thought the best thing is to start with your history. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that we love about you that people may not know is, you used to be a bigger person. You mm-hmm. had a big weight loss. Mm-hmm. The thing that's so significant about that is, when you weighed 600 pounds, you were just as positive as you are now. So can you talk about that whole weight loss journey, everything about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think also it wasn't just that I was positive, is that I had that self-love. So it didn't matter, and still doesn't matter exactly what's happening externally, because I think at an early age, I really started to understand what matters is in here, and how I feel about myself, how I treat others, and how I treat myself. So the weight loss journey, actually, I don't share this story that often, but my dad, who was a really healthy guy, would work out on his lunch break, went into the hospital with high blood pressure. And I went to go visit him, and I almost fainted. It was just so strange seeing him plugged into things. He had lost like 30 pounds just being in the hospital. And I was like, And then I was like, well, if that can happen to him, what can happen to me? So I went to the doctor, which I had been avoiding for years because I knew he was just going to tell me to lose weight. And I was like, I get it. And he said, I did all the tests, and he said, and when I got the test back, he said, I'm shocked. You're completely healthy in every single way, except for your BMI. So he said, if you want to, do it now before your body gives up on you. And so it was literally from that moment on. I had always been confident. I had always loved myself, but I wanted to be healthy. And that was the game changer for me. And that's when things really aligned, where it's not about doing it to make sure that I look better. It was doing it so that I feel better, and so that I can have the longevity of the life that I want for myself. And along the way, I guess I kind of turned into also being a leader and a role model for others, because weight loss comes with ups and downs.
Absolutely. Well, I know that you talk a lot about body shaming, and like so many people, we don't like our arms, our thighs, our hair, anything. So, I know you give out so much advice, but what are your top tips you give for people about body shaming?
Mm-hmm. Well, so usually the question I ask is, is it coming from externally or is it coming internally? Because external usually doesn't really necessarily have to do with you. That's someone else's opinions or preconceived notions, or had them being upset with themselves and taking it out on you. Whereas the internal is what's more important, because we have our biggest relationship in our entire lives is the one with ourselves. And so whenever someone is body shaming, obviously to some extent, it impacts people in different ways. But I think the goal is to shift the language. And as a coach, that's one of my biggest pillars, is shifting people's language. So how you talk to yourself and just being mindful of it. So even like a journal of, what did I say to myself? How did that make me feel? How can I flip that around? So with my clients, I have this little tool that I call Turn That Frown Upside Down. And when I do workshops and stuff, I use myself as an example because it's, again, all about authenticity and being my true self and creating those safe spaces. Because when one person is vulnerable, it provides space for other people to be vulnerable. And so when I walk into the room, I hold up a piece of paper and it says fat. And everyone's like, you know, and then I flip the piece of paper around and I go work in progress. And then everyone's kind of like, oh. So I'm like, don't forget that you introduce yourself into a room and to anybody before you say a word. And so if I show up to every room going, hi, I'm Raia, I'm the fat kid, that's how people are going to treat me. But instead I walk in the room and go, hi, I'm Raia, nice to meet you. Then you're like, oh, and they see me rather than just the weight. So shifting my language was able to help me build that confidence and remove myself from body shaming, just really talking to myself, I love you. I honor you. I respect you. You're more than enough. These are some of my mantras that I say to myself every day. And I think also just a reminder that every body is different. And what we have been conditioned to think is the norm and sexy and attractive is exactly that, what we were conditioned to think, and not necessarily true. So I think it's important for all of us to sort of dismantle that in a way that works for us, because all bodies are different and all bodies are beautiful.
I absolutely love what you said. And one thing that you brought up, which I think is so powerful because nobody's talked about it, is what I'm really getting from what you're saying that people don't understand is that when you walk into a room, you have a conversation before you open your mouth, that we have large conversations that are nonverbal. And so what you're saying is like that conversation starts from what you're saying to yourself, what you believe about yourself.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That is like, that's hugely powerful. I think it makes a gigantic difference. Where did you get your confidence from? Is that something that you feel that you were born with? Is that based on your, you know, your parents? Where did that come from? That's the first part. The second part, how do you get it if you're not like you? So
Woo! That's a loaded question.
A big one. Okay, maybe.
Yeah. Can we have some of it, please?
Okay, one at a time.
Maybe just do the first part. Maybe it's too big a question. Sorry about that.
No, all good. I'm ready. I'm like, let's fire it up. Let's go. I'm ready. We'll do the first one, and then I'll tap into the second one. The first one, I think it's a combination of everything. I think I'm a psychology major, so I think I also bring things into nurture versus nature. So how you were raised or your environment and what's innate. And so I think that there's a part of, my mom always said I was born consciously aware. So I think in terms of looking at things objectively, coming from my higher self and seeing the true me, regardless of what other people saw, I think was genuinely innate for me. And a lot of people have to learn how to do that. And then pairing that with supportive parents, because when I was figuring out who I am and what I wanted and how I wanted to dress, etc., they were like, okay, cool. I taught them how to treat me. Whereas my siblings more, they were treated how my parents thought they should be treated.
Wow.
But I was the kid who was like, actually, no. You know, in grade 4, I told my parents, I'm a hybrid. And they were like, what does that mean? And I said, it means I don't want to do ballet anymore and I want to dress like a boy. And they were like, okay, cool. So having that support to be able to freely figure out who I am at a young age allowed me to be the me that I am now. And I would say the third piece was also the ongoing resiliency of constantly changing schools and being the new kid, being the only person of color, being the only fat kid, being the only new kid. I was constantly putting myself in these situations, not necessarily on purpose, but that ultimately built a lot of resiliency and the beginnings of me creating my toolbox of, okay, what works best for me? How can I overcome this in a way? And my toolbox in grade 4 was going around the room and introducing myself to every single kid and learning their name and something about them. I took that tool with me everywhere I went, still to this day. If I walk into a room and I don't maybe feel my best or I don't know anyone, instead of shying away and shrinking myself and making myself smaller like we all do, I tap back into my power and remember that I got my tools. So I go around the room and I introduce myself to every single person and learn their name and something about them. And then 10 minutes later, everyone's like, wow, have you met Raia? She's great. She asked about me, you know, and then we create that energy. So I think my confidence was a combination of those 3 pillars, supportive parents, a little bit being innate, and that ongoing resiliency.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
And then the second part was how can people create it for themselves? Well, that's obviously a tricky one because everybody's different. and what works for everyone is going to be different. But I like to break it down to the things that people don't really think of. For example, one of them that I always share with people is boundaries. People don't realize that honoring and creating and implementing boundaries can actually improve your confidence, because it's also building on your self-trust. It's building on how you feel about yourself and how you treat yourself. And all those things play a role in building that foundation for confidence. Another one is obviously self-love and self-care, but not the, I'm at a spa, look at me. Like, that's great if that feels good for you in that way, but that's very surface level. It can be self-care in some ways in moderation, within reason, if you can afford it, right? If you can't afford it, then that's a disconnect. And now you're doing self-care things that are hurting you financially. It doesn't add up, right? So for me, I really like to think of self-care as asking ourselves the tough questions to figure out who we are, because then we can actually see what works for us and what doesn't. And then I think the second thing, I'm going to have a ton of things that I could say. I probably have like a list of 100 things of how we can build and achieve and maintain our own inner confidence. But another big pillar for me is, I always talk about people building their own toolboxes. And I like to describe a toolbox as the things that help you feel at your best. And so we're here today, so we've overcome something, meaning we all have tools. If we've overcome something, we have tools. And I always say, maybe they're under your bed or at the bottom of your backpack or your purse or in the garage, because we haven't recognized that they're tools. We just overcame things and then we're like, okay, bye. I'm good now. But let's collect them, put them in our imaginative toolbox. So that way, the next time we're feeling annoyed, sad, triggered, emotional, overwhelmed, angry, we dip into our tools rather than potentially our vices. So my thing is to encourage everyone to create their toolbox or whatever it is. So someone could say, oh, I love painting. Okay, so maybe the next time you're feeling sad or overwhelmed or annoyed or frustrated, try cooking. And chances are, if that's something that feels good to your core, it'll refuel your energy, and chances are you won't have to tap into your vices and you'll feel much better.
Wow. I love what I so love what you say. I mean, everything. I mean, but the boundaries, especially, like, it's super huge.
Yeah.
And there's been so much in the media right now about depression and anxiety increasing, especially with, younger adults, millennials. I was talking to my sister the other day. Her daughter is like really struggling. Like, it's really hard. So when you talk about confidence, that also ties into mental health. Like,
yeah.
I know there's so many tips, but how are you approaching that now? I know you talk to a younger audience. How are you approaching that?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really big topic that's been showing up a lot more, and obviously in the last 6 months, with people not being able to do the things that they would normally do that help them feel good. So a lot of people are met with a lot more alone time, a lot more time to think, and then potentially a lot more time sitting within their own darkness that they potentially have been avoiding for a long period of time, like we all have. But my whole thing is, be a flashlight. This is what I would tell myself when I was a kid, is that the darkness or the negative thoughts can sometimes swirl through your head, and it can be hard to think of something or focus on something or move through it. So I would take my time to move through it and then imaginatively lock it up in my head. But I have the key and I wear it around my neck all the time. And it's obviously invisible, imaginative. But for me, that represents I'm in control. I have the power. And so when I want to go in there, I can unlock the door. I can do some unpacking. I can do some reflecting. But when I'm done, I lock it back up. So that way it doesn't rule in my head. I am in control. So when I talk about mindset a lot, it's thinking about, what works well for you and what doesn't, but also not being scared to shine a light on your own darkness, because that's how we actually create more light. And so a lot of people are scared to heal or scared to feel those things. But I'm all about, let's get into the feels, because it doesn't have to be scary. We've all been conditioned to think, or, especially for men, feelings aren't for you, or women, you're too emotional. But for me, I think let's get into the feels so that we can feel more and remove them and move through them. So a lot of my meditations are that too. But the biggest thing that I think about mindset is, again, language. How you talk to yourself, how you talk about yourself, and kind of being mindful of the sneaky words, because I think we all can understand dumb, stupid, ugly if someone were to say that to themselves. We get that that's negative self-talk, right? But we don't necessarily think about the sneaky words like need, should, have, I think even in context, right? I was working with a client. I said, tell me one thing you're proud of. And he said, I think I'm proud of this. And I said, okay, what if we remove the I think?
Yeah.
Right. And then all of a sudden his shoulders got taller. His eye contact got more prominent. He goes, I am proud of. And I said, well, which one felt better? And obviously he said the latter. So the power in just 1 second comes from language. And our minds never sleep. We sleep, but our minds never sleep. No one would expect a 4-year-old to think that they can accomplish anything if every day they were told they were stupid. So why do we assume that we could do the same to ourselves? So mindset for me, I always bring that to language.
If you're a woman entrepreneur looking to grow your business, we'd love to have you as a member of our community.
Here you can collaborate, network, cross-promote, and feel supported, whether it's a free expert workshop, a hike, or a Monday morning group meditation.
You can find all the details about membership in the notes, or you can go to our website at she'sontop.com.
It makes such sense. And it's great with the idea of language because it helps us really pivot to the next topic, which is gender fluidity, which is, how we talk about ourselves, how we talk about each other, how we do this kind of identification thing. And I think it's interesting on all sides because, you have a very unique idea around this. You think of yourselves as Raia, which I would like to talk to you about, and also how, I have a friend of mine, she has a child and she refers to that child as they, and I often get confused because she has 2 children and it takes me a minute to realize she's not talking about 2 children. She's talking about 1. So yeah, I would just love your thoughts on the gender fluidity topic and your feeling.
Yeah. It's just even so cool that that's even a conversation now, because for so long it was just not a conversation at all. And to the point where so many people would ask me, are you a boy? Are you a girl? Why do you wear boys' clothes? This and that. And I was just, again, that resiliency, that supportive parents, that those things never hit me in a way that was, I'm taking it personal and now I don't think that I should be me. Instead, I would be like, that's so weird that you think that, and to an extent, and I would just challenge it with curiosity. And I remember one time this happened, I was doing a workshop, I think for grade 4s, and one kid was like, are you a boy or a girl? Why do you wear boys' clothes? And it never gets easier per se to hear that, because obviously we all want to feel seen as we are. And I had, 30, not even, maybe 5 seconds to think about how to respond. Do I call this kid in? Do I use it as an opportunity to learn? Or do I challenge with curiosity? And I chose the latter. And I said, well, I'm just wearing a black long sleeve shirt and black pants, right? And he goes, yeah. And I go, do guys wear black shirts and pants? And he goes, yeah. I go, do girls wear black shirts and pants? He goes, yeah. That's why then I guess I'm just wearing black shirt and pants. And he was like, he didn't really have a rebuttal, because if I break it down, especially kids, they get it. It was actually harder for parents. So I think for me, I always knew that I was a little bit different per se. And I really, really resonated with hanging out with my guy friends and the boys. And growing up, my neighborhood was all guys. I was the only girl. I never felt different. But then as you get older, everyone's like, well, you should be doing more of this. You should be doing that. Or the guys are going to do the guy stuff and you're going to go do that. And I was always like, that doesn't align with me. And so then when I started to have that conversation of calling myself a hybrid, was because I very much felt as though I am a blend of both. And I'm 50% women and 50% man, even from the way I talk, my mannerisms, from how my mindset, everything. And when I started to own that more, I recognized that I wanted to call in both genders rather than potentially not aligning with either, which I can absolutely understand. So for me, when people ask me, what are your pronouns? I say she and her. And then if they want to ask me more, I would say, well, probably hybrid if I were to really give you the answer. But I say she and her because that still is who I am. But masculinity and femininity don't belong to any one gender. They are just traits and attributes that any gender can have. Even in the French language, it's how certain words are pronounced, and it has nothing to do with gender, right? And things don't have to be black and white. And I think for so long, that's how things wanted to be. And it was hard for people to understand it. But if you really think about it, just because someone has a body part in between their legs doesn't mean that they can't have more things of how they feel and how they want to show up and how they feel their best selves. And so I feel like I say she and her because I resonate with both. And I think for any parent or anyone who's out there who is, with a kid who might be trying to figure out their own identity or sexuality, is that it might be confusing for them too. And so wherever possible, have that patience, listen to learn, do some of your own research, and ultimately support them. And what we always say when we do kids workshops is we go, if someone comes out or shares with you they've changed their pronoun, they're the exact same person they were 5 minutes before and 5 minutes after. And that always is a great way to kind of remind people that it's just a part of them. It's not, nothing else has changed.
Yeah, I love that answer. Sometimes people get so hung up with using the word she or he, and it really isn't about that, right? It's just respecting what that person wants to be. And which actually kind of brings me, we have so many questions for you, but we have like one last question, which is about authenticity.
We could talk for hours.
We could talk for hours, and we're going to have you back, and we'd love to ask more questions. But authenticity, I know, is a huge part of your platform, gender fluidity. So you're now an influencer, right? You have a really big following.
I guess.
How do you? Okay, last question.
That's a great face. It's like, oh.
Yeah. I don't love that name for sure, but yes, I guess we could call it that.
Yeah. So as an influencer, how do you stay true to yourself? We had a short discussion before we did this interview about how many times a day should you post, and is it important how many likes you have and all that. So how do you stay true to yourself? How do you stay authentic, especially when you are influencing other young people?
Relentlessly. Relentlessly. That, I've always been the kid that can't be moved. You can't tell me anything. I have to figure it out on my own. And my parents can attest to that with the pros and cons, I'm sure. And I think for me, it's really always bringing it back to my why. And my why was to share. My why was to bring people on the journey that I'm on, and to also, learn and grow on what I'm doing, but also to provide that to other people in an effort to ensure that there is a level of accessibility. I've always said that, what I speak to and what I'm talking about should be accessible to everyone. And social media was a really great platform to do that. But then somehow, people started to follow me and engage with what I was putting out there. And what happens is it starts to become pressure, and then posting, and then everyone wants a piece of you, and everyone wants to partner, and everyone wants to sponsor. And I just had to wrangle myself in one day and put it all, lay everything out and just say, none of that matters. What matters to me is the impact over numbers. And when I started to sort of get, dabble my feet in the influencer and partnerships, everyone kept saying, wow, it's so nice to meet someone who's exactly like they are online. And I was like, what? I was shocked. And I was like, well, isn't everybody? And they were like, no. A lot of people are very different from who they are online. And I was a little bit, it was a little disheartening. And for me, that was also the reminder that, okay, if I'm going to do this my way, I'm going to be me no matter what, because I can't be anything other than me. And so what I started to do was also just share more about the process and be like, I don't feel like posting an inspirational post today, or I don't care about the numbers. I don't care about posting every day. I'm literally just going to be me and see how that goes. And luckily, the people who are kind of on the same mindset and level as me, it resonates with them. And everyone else, if it doesn't, that's okay too. That's how I feel about it. And I think ultimately authenticity is priceless. And totally now with everything that's happened and there being more of a drive on digital marketing and content, the brands and big companies more align with my authenticity rather than they'd rather, partner with someone who has 24,000 followers like myself versus the person who has 5 million followers and doesn't engage with anybody and doesn't know anybody. I've probably had at least one conversation with every one of my followers.
Wow, amazing.
Because it's about building that community. If I don't know your name, then how do I build my community?
Yeah.
But that also takes a lot of time. But it's worth it.
I am fascinated by, when we first talked to you about what people loved about you, they were like, she's positive. Where we didn't talk about energy. So how do you think that that's been a shift in your culture? Like Tracy and I really try and with She's on Top, we try to hold a space or an energy of abundance. And I'd be curious with your take on energy.
Yeah, it's cool. First of all, that again, these conversations are even being had, because even myself, I didn't really understand it at first. And people would always say to me, oh, I love your energy. And I was like, maybe they just like that I'm outgoing, or that I'm nice, or that I'm funny. I didn't really get it until I started to do sort of my own spiritual practice and understanding myself even more. And now it's sort of a conversation I can have with anyone. And the fact that it's even something I can speak to in corporate spaces, and understanding that how you show up and the energy you bring to a space, to a room, to a conversation matters, has been, I think, an absolute game changer, because that's always how I've been, And so now when I do corporate wellness and workshops and keynotes, I can speak to that about how people can manage themselves, because there's going to be external things happening no matter what. But if you can manage your own energy, your own emotions, your own confidence and mindset, then none of this has to impact you in that way. So I speak a lot to energy of how showing up, or not responding to that passive aggressive email with another passive aggressive email, So it's been really cool to see how that conversation has evolved. And now people are starting to get it, in myself understanding it and taking that understanding even deeper more and more as well.
Beautiful.
Brilliant. Yeah. And energy is everything. I think energy is everything.
Well,
we don't realize it's unspoken, right? We don't realize, like you said, we're not going to necessarily put this in the thing, but you walk into a room, like you said, and people can tell right away before you open your mouth what you're about. It's your energy, and we don't realize that. That's why we always start our interviews with like a bit of jumping. Otherwise, sometimes we're really flat.
Exactly.
And Tracy and I see the same therapist. And I remember when I first went to see him.
I love that.
Not together, separately.
Separately. Like we had the same guy. He's amazing. And I remember him saying to me, you don't realize it, but you walk in a room and you've had a conversation with everybody in there. And he said, when you shift, when your energy shifts, like he goes, you'll walk in that same room and the people you don't like won't see you, and the people that you wanted to connect with that you couldn't before will hear you, because you're having a different energetic conversation, right? Like It's sort of like, so it's huge. And I always think too, it's good to have a control over it, be aware of it, because you're having an energetic conversation, whether you're running it or not.
Exactly. And I think that also can tie really nicely into authenticity as well.
Yes.
Because if you're always feeling your best self, then your energy is going to emit that, and you attract what you're putting out. The law of attraction is really about energy.
I'm going to sneak in one last question.
Sneak it in.
And you can just give me a sentence. I just want a sentence. It's not an answer.
Oh, that's hard for me.
Yeah. It's a challenge, but you'll like it. How is Raia? How are you a gift to you?
I am a gift to me by never being scared to fail and to always be eager to learn.
Amazing. Beautiful.
Love that. Beautiful. Yay!
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. We are going to put, actually, how can we help you? We're going to put links to your website. If you want to reach you, what's the best way to reach you?
For personal coaching, all the different things that you do.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously my website is a great one. My Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn as well, Facebook, Twitter, but I would say LinkedIn and Instagram are my two biggest platforms. My website. And then I actually do have an article specifically on talking about gender pronouns and fluidity and how to support someone. And that would be a great article to share for anyone who, when we were talking about that really resonates with them, or that's something they're going through or needing to support someone.
Thank you so much for being with us today. And we can't wait to speak to you again about more interesting topics.
Yes, all of them.
Big gratitude. Thank you.
Thanks, Raia.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
If you enjoyed this podcast, we'd be grateful if you'd take a moment to rate it and write a quick review, because that helps us get found. And of course, we'd love it if you'd subscribe.
To learn more about us and our amazing community, go to our website and sign up for our newsletter. And also follow us on Instagram at she's.on.top.
Thanks for listening.